Hello, welcome to the latest edition of Ragic Office Hour. And let's get started by doing a recap on one of our latest features. Okay, today we're looking at our report configuration settings. So this is pretty cool. And before this feature was introduced, generally when you go to a report, the access right for a report is based on the data source of the report. So basically all reports have their data source, and they're usually based on one Ragic sheet as their data source. So the access right for that report naturally will be exactly the same as the data source. So if you have like for all of your internal users as a bulletin user to the data source, and all reports created from that Ragic sheet, from that data source, will have exactly the same access right settings, so that all internal users will be bulletin users. So if you have a report which is open to everyone, or if you have a report that you would like it to be open for everyone to access, and you will have to basically make the data source open for everyone to access. So, but this has been a little bit of constraint on our report building, because you will not be able to assign different type of access right for the report if the access right setting you want for the report is different from the data source. So what we introduced is that now you can assign a specific independent access right setting to the reports independent of the data source, so that you could, if there's no configuration here, the report will still have the same access right setting as your data source, like before this feature was introduced. So it's not going to affect any of your current reports. So if you're creating a new report, or you would like to add some new configuration to your existing reports, you will be able to assign a different access right setting to the reports, which is independent to the data source. Okay, so for example, let's take a look at like this one. So right here, for this report, you will be able to like choose the access right groups, like which groups have access right setting to this report. So for the access right setting for reports are a little bit simpler than the data source, because data source, there are editing rights and reading rights, but for reports it's only reading rights. So you just choose the user groups that has the access right to this report. For example, this is a reservation report, and you will be able to choose the user groups that you would like to have access to the report if they originally don't already have access to the report. All right? So this is a useful new feature that you can configure an independent access right setting to individual reports in case that they do not follow exactly the same access right setting as the original data source sheet. All right, and let's get back to the office hour questions. Okay, first question. Ragic is working slow when subtable in specific record is too large. Hi, is this somehow possible when the specific record has more than 1,000 records under subtable to work normal, as you have, for example, 30 records in subtables? This is kind of a known issue, and because you have so many records that needs to be rendered on that sheet. And right now, yes, if you have like 1,000 records under a subtable, it's going to work relatively slower than having like 30 records under a subtable. So this is expected, and we are working on some remedies for this, like lazy rendering, to ensure a quicker display for records with lots of data on the subtable. So we are working on something to remedy this, to make these kind of records and render as fast as other records. But still, they need to actually retrieve 1,000 records from the subtable. So there are some technical limitations that we still have to face that cannot be easily resolved. So it's still forever gonna be kind of slower than like 30 records in the subtable, but we are working on some solutions that can make it, substantially faster. So also on specific sheets, there are survey user, so that one user can see only records that he creates. But by the time he is on vacation, it should be assigned to another user, but only by the time he is away. Is it possible to do that? The best way would be like it is on personal setting deputy, so that he can see all records on specific sheets. Okay, for this part of the question, we don't have a feature to do that automatically yet, but it is possible to do it manually. So if you go to your access right settings documentation, you will know that you are able to change the entry manager of a sheet. So the entry manager of a sheet act kind of like the creator of the sheet. Entry manager of a record act like the creator of the record. So like for survey users, they can only see records that they create. But if you assign a record to a user or to a user group, then the user or user group will be able to see the record on sheets where they have survey user access right, just like they created this record. We call this that they are the entry managers. So if a record is assigned to a user or a user group, then they are the entry managers of the group, and they will be able to see the record on survey user access right roles. And they will be able to edit the record when they have built-in user access right roles. And the way to assign entries to user is to create a select user field or a select group field on the sheet. So to assign entries, like adding a user as an entry manager, what you do is to add a select user field to the sheet and check set selected user as entry manager. And this way, the selected user will be assigned as the entry manager. And when you remove it, when the person is back from vacation, you can remove the deputy and you can remove the assignment for the record, and the deputy will not be able to see the record again. So this works for the same for assigning entries to a group. So if you add a group, then you can have kind of like a deputy group, or maybe in some other instance you want to assign the entry manager to a certain group, like a certain team of people. Then you will be able to add a select group field and check set selected group as entry manager. So when the group is selected, then the group will be able to act as the entry manager of the record, so that when they're assigned to as the survey users, and they will be able to see and edit the record as if they have recreated the record. So that's what the entry manager of a record does. So this is a kind of a manual alternative to solve this. If you want like a deputy person to be able to see records, when the person is on leave, and to remove the access right when the person comes back. Okay, so let's summarize the answers. First of all, right, we are currently working on some solutions to render very large records faster. Right now, the best way would be, I think I mentioned this, and if you have a lot of records before our solution is online, I would recommend that you can hide the very large subtable under a sheet section so that you have different tabs on the sheet. By tabs, I'm referring to, we should have tabs on some of the sheets. Yeah, I'm referring to this. You can hide a subtable in like this sheet section, this tab, and by default, when you go to a record, the first tab will be displayed, but the very large subtable will not be rendered by default. And if it's not rendered, then the record will be displayed quite a bit faster. To put the very large subtable in a sheet section that is by default hidden. This way, the large subtable is not rendered by default, and you will be able to access the record faster. All right, and this for the second question, yeah, you should be able to use assigning entries to do that. Right now, we don't have an automated way to do this by personal settings. However, you should be able to do this manually using assigning entries. So here's assigning entries. All right. I hope this helps. Next question. Is it possible to filter a subtable using a non-subtable field on the same record? Yeah, off the top of my mind, I don't think there's any feature for that, and I'm not sure what the use case is. So let's look at the detailed question. We are looking at a record that can help log developments throughout the year of the employees. Each year, this will be reviewed and new data added for the following year. Okay, I see where this is going. Some example of the data we will be collecting are qualifications, areas for individual development, activities completed toward these areas of development. We have used separate subtables for each of the categories above. As there will be a lot of activity with these subtables, I would like to create a non-subtable selection field with a time period like 2025 to 2026 on the same record. Once the correct time period has been selected, I want this to automatically filter the subtable to only show the activities within this period. Okay, that sounds like a reasonable design, but yeah, but we never really thought about that, and I don't think we have a feature for that yet. Perhaps this could be completed in a conditional formatting where there could be an option to filter as well as show and hide, which would be applied to the subtable field. This is from Jess from Wales. I don't really see how we could do this with conditional formatting because I think to support this, we will need some additional UI elements to do this because this kind of design kind of conflicts with, you know, one of the principle, because this non-subtable selection field with a time period, this is actually not an actual field that you would like to save into the database. So it's not actually a field. So whenever a user chooses a different time period, it's going to only change it's kind of part of the UI. It changes how the record is displayed right now, but the time period is just really not part of the record. It's only like a display setting for the record. So generally, we don't like to put things that only affect how a record is displayed as a part of the fields on the sheet. So we do understand this type of requirement, but I think what we would do to support this in the future would be something like, perhaps this could already be supported, is that, you know, you could have a time period here, and you could just filter for the time period on the subtable. And I understand that there are lots of subtables here, and you would like to do it all at once. Yeah, but right now you'll probably need to filter them one by one using the subtable filters. Yeah. And I will discuss this with our team to see if this is something that we'll be able to support in the future. So there could be an easier way to apply like a full set of filters, like how you would do how you would filter records as a view. Like maybe we could create some kind of view that would filter subtables. I think that would be a more suitable solution to this kind of problem, to this kind of requirement. All right? Okay. Yeah, this is good feedback. So thank you for your feedback. Right now, subtables will need to be filtered individually. Like this. We don't have a way to filter multiple subtables at once now. And yeah. And right now, this requirement is based on the assumption that all of these subtables have the exact same field with the exact same options, because that's the only way that this requirement will work. They will all need the same time period options, like the same time periods to select from for it to work correctly. So yeah, it's not Yeah, it's not a very general solution. So a more general solution would be to create a view, a saved view for multiple filters, subtable filters to be applied to a record. This will most likely need the support of saved views for subtables for the form page subtables. We will look into this requirement and see if this is something that we can support in the future. And meanwhile, the best solution would be to filter each subtables individually on the form page. All right, and thank you for your questions. And that's it for today's Ragic Office Hour. If you have any other questions, please feel free to use the Office Hours question sheet and to ask your questions, and I will be answering your questions in 2 weeks. All right, and thank you and goodbye.